Welcome to Love and Abuse Insights. This is an addendum to the regular show that you'll find scattered in between full episodes. On Insights, I pick random emails that I haven't addressed yet and do my best to provide my insights and opinions. Everything you hear on this show is for informational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being. Dear Paul, I can't express in words what I'm going through since I discovered your Love and Abuse podcast a couple days ago. This comes at a time where I've almost given up on ever feeling happy and comfortable in my own life again. I'm sure you hear that a lot, but it feels like this podcast was made for me and my husband. I would like to thank you for making me feel this way. It's like your voice is saying what my subconscious has known all along and has been trying to explain to me for ages, but just couldn't find the right words to get through to my foggy brain. I've been with my husband since the early 2000s, and things were bad from the beginning. I've tried moving to 3 different countries to make him happy. I've tried to change my personality. I've made excuses and I've sought help in many places, but I've never been able to put my finger on what was wrong or give it a name. I'm now just realizing that I am at the receiving end of an emotionally and sometimes sexually abusive relationship, and that his behavior is unacceptable. I don't know yet what I'm going to make of this recently acquired knowledge, but I know that I will no longer be a passive onlooker of my internal turmoil, and being able to name it is already a huge relief. There's one thing that has always kept me from taking drastic measures, and that is my fear of exposing my 2 kids to the toxic, manipulative side of their father that comes out when he doesn't get what he wants. I know they're old enough to understand a lot, but he is a master at making himself the victim and brushing off other people's needs and feelings as if they were invalid. How can I protect them from that? He will always be in their life. I actually want them to have a good relationship, but how can I keep them safe once I make a decision and he flips? That really scares me. I must add that we are both seeing separate counselors because he is already aware of his problems, but he is highly intelligent, and I'm not convinced he has really taken it all on, or if he's just pretending to get back into my good books. Anyway, I will keep listening to your other episodes, and I'm sure I'll find more answers and have more than one epiphany over the days to come. Again, thank you for sharing your incredible wisdom in this respectful and sensitive manner with people like me who are desperate to develop and get on with their lives in a more fulfilling way. All right, there's the email for today. Thank you so much for writing that. I pretty much read that in its entirety because I think a lot of the words spoken can be related to. For people listening to this show, they can relate to these words, and not having a label, not knowing what to call what's happening in certain relationships can be very difficult. Why do I feel so bad all the time? Why do I feel so guilty? Why do I feel responsible for all the problems in the relationship? Why does it feel like I have to fix things and they can do no wrong? And I'm putting some words in her mouth here, but I'm sure you can relate to a lot of this. If you are in a type of relationship like this, you can probably relate to a lot of that. And I'm going to just get right to her question, which has to do with exposing her husband's behavior to her kids. You're not going to be able to avoid that. It's just something that you will not be able to really do anything about unless he's being physically abusive, which, that's a legal matter. But you didn't say that, so I'm assuming that his emotionally abusive behavior, the kids will see that. They will be experiencing that. The difference will be if you take a step to leave him, that they will be more in his focus. I don't want to say in his sights, but sometimes that's what can happen. And what that might mean is there's actually 2 things because of that. There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that they will see his behavior for what it is. Meaning, when you are dealing with his behavior today, what ends up happening when you're not there is that they become the target of his behavior in a different way. It's a different relationship. It's a different way. And they're going to see behaviors in him that they didn't necessarily see before because you were the target before. Now, this sounds scary, I know, but hear me out. What's going to happen is that they're going to hear stories about you. I mean, this is my prediction. They're going to hear stories about you from him that are probably blatantly false. He's going to make stuff up. He's going to run a smear campaign against you. He's going to call you names or whatever. And they're going to hear this stuff, and they may or may not know what to believe. But what ends up happening is they get exposed to the same type of behavior that you did. And what you need to do, and this is part B of my answer, what you need to do is say as few negative comments as you possibly can about him. In fact, it's best to just ignore what he's saying for the most part, unless it's really something that has to be dealt with. But a lot of what he says about you will be probably made to hurt you and cause you to defend yourself and defend yourself to your kids. I never said that. I never did that. He's wrong about that. He's lying. And I'm going to encourage you not to do that with your kids. If you've listened to my other episodes, you've heard me, or at least heard me tell you how to talk to kids. And I believe when kids are in any type of emotionally abusive or narcissistic abusive situation where one of the parents are emotionally abusive or hurtful, then it's important to ask your kids questions when they come to you with lies and smearing and all the other offensive commentary that the abusive person is saying about you. It's important to ask your kids questions. Questions like, do you believe that's true? What do you think? Well, Mom, he said XYZ. He said if you didn't do that, he would never have had to pay all that money. Well, what do you think? Do you think that's true? Well, that's what he told me. Well, I have a different opinion about that. I have a different story about that. But it's important for you to make up your mind about what's true. So this is what's going to happen. You're going to get faced with all these details. Like the other person's going to throw all these details at your kids, and your kids are going to have to figure out what's true and what's not. And what's likely going to happen is that the kids may believe some of this stuff, depending on who they are and how old they are. They may believe some of this stuff at first, but because they are the target of his behavior now, that he doesn't have you to target, they will be the target of his behavior, and they will start to see inconsistencies. So this isn't all good news, but it's not all bad news either, because I've said this before, kids are brilliant. Kids are smart. They figure things out. I've seen this happen in my own family, or at least extended family, where a child will hear all these falsities. They'll hear all these untruths, and then they'll go to the other parent and say, well, you did this and you did that, and that's why, my dad is upset. That's why my dad is angry at you. And if you didn't do all that stuff, he wouldn't be where he is today. And I've seen the response to that, which is basically either ignoring that or asking them, well, do you believe that's true? And sometimes they'll say, yes, well, that's what, so-and-so said. That's what dad said. That's what mom said. So it must be true. And this is a difficult situation because they're going to hear untruths that you're going to want to defend. You're going to want to say things to them. And it's best not to try to defend or get too emotionally charged up about it, because that is also part of the scheme, the manipulation. The emotionally abusive person, the narcissistic person, is going to say things hoping you get charged up about it. Because if you get charged up, guess who looks like the crazy one? The person that's all charged up can look like the crazy one. This is why it's in your best interest, almost all the time, it's in your best interest to act calm, to act rational, reasonable, because what's going to happen is if you don't have these huge protective or defensive stances, the other person, the person doing the abusive behavior, is going to start getting agitated and more irritated that you're not responding the way they want you to. And what that will end up doing is working against them, because they're going to start showing bigger and bigger frustrations. I mean, this is a scenario. It's not always the scenario. But this is commonly what happens, is that the person they're trying to agitate doesn't get agitated, and the person doing the agitating gets agitated. It works against them. And I'm not saying you do this on purpose. I'm saying it's important you do this for the children. I mean, you can get agitated all you want in person with them. If you have an issue with the abuser and the abuser is saying things and doing things to your face, that's a different story. This is only when your kids are used in between. They're used as emotional weapons to hurt you. So your kids are going to come to you and say, so-and-so said this, mom or dad said this, said you were this, said you were that. And they may or may not believe it at first, but allow them to come to their own conclusions. And this is why it's important for you to stay calm, stay loving, always love your kids. Even if they're throwing these lies in your face and they believe them, I still love you. That's not true. You can even say that. That's not true. But I'm not here to tell you what's true or not. I just know what's true for me and what happened. And he has his side and I have my side, but I know what's true. But I want you to make up your own mind. That's another thing. You empower the children to make up their own mind. What do you think? And you might even ask, why do you think he said that? And, there might be people against this, like, well, don't get the children involved. But they're already involved, and they're going to be involved with certain people. They're going to be used, and they're going to be told a lot of things. They're going to be told a lot of lies. This is, in this scenario and other situations. And when they're told all these lies, they have to know that there is a place to go to express themselves, to share what they've been told, and even share what they believe, and know that there's not going to be a backlash when doing that. So the children come to you and they say, well, dad said this and dad said that, and he must be right because this is what's happening now, and look at you, and that all could come out of their mouths. Just stay calm, stay loving, and honor them for who they are. They are your children, and know that they're going to be fed these sometimes horrible stories about you, horrible, horrible lies. And just trust them. Trust your children are going to come up with the solutions or the answers on their own. And yes, you may very likely get into a conversation with them because they're going to say, well, explain that. Explain that. And you can say, okay, this is how it happened. This is how it happened. This XYZ happened, and then XYZ happened, and then you explain it all if you want. But be calm. Try not to be highly energized, even though you want to be. Try not to say, well, that son of a, I can't believe he lied so much. I can't believe he's telling you all this stuff. Because as soon as you do that, again, you're going to look irrational. Because what ends up happening sometimes is the abusive person will try to appear as the rational one. They'll try to appear as the sane one. And I know this isn't in all situations. I'm talking about this very specific circumstance this person wrote about. It sounds like what's going to happen is that the children are going to be exposed to the toxic side. And this is, I guess, part C of my answer. There's no way around that. And the children are going to learn and have their own relationship with their father, and you can't help it. You're not going to be able to help that situation out. They're going to have to adjust, and you're going to have to adjust to this new dynamic. And it may be very unpleasant. And like I said, you may hear a lot of things that aren't true. But trust your children, love your children, honor them. Yes, they'll be exposed to a toxic person, and that the environment will be a lot different, and there'll be a lot of variables that they don't know how to deal with. And they need a stable, loving parent waiting for them when they return from their visit to the other toxic person, the abusive person, the person that may not even be hurtful to your children, but may actually use your children as emotional weapons against you. And that's the dangerous part, because the children are going to be fed all kinds of random information, and their brains are still very young, still developing, and they're trying to process all this stuff. And yes, it'll be difficult for them, but that's why they need someone stable like you. So this is me telling you, be stable, be supportive, be loving, and be there for them, so that when it all blows up, which it might, and blows up meaning they will finally understand who the abuser is. When someone's abusive, they always reveal themselves to the target of that abuse. And when the target of that abuse is gone, there's a new target. So the target of his abuse up to now has been you. But if you leave, the target of his abuse will still be you, but through them. So they are sort of by proxy. They're targets by proxy, where they now serve the abuse that he is serving through them to you. And so they become part of the abuse cycle. And they already are part of it because they're in the family. They already sense it. They already know things are wrong or not healthy. They may not call it unhealthy. They may not call it toxic. In fact, they may not even realize it's unhealthy. I mean, I grew up in an alcoholic home. My stepfather was an abusive alcoholic since I was 1. And I thought our family structure, our dynamic, was normal. I didn't think it was abnormal. I didn't like it. I was scared as hell a lot. And I didn't think it was crazy or unhealthy or toxic because I was a kid. And I didn't know any better. And I was a kid growing up in a home that didn't know anything else. I didn't know what it was like to be in another home. All I knew is that I was unhappy a lot. And I found ways to be happy away from home. That's why I became a loner. I isolated myself, really. I played outside. I took long walks, which is dangerous for an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, around my neighborhood or to the store. But that's what I did. I got away from home, and I became an introvert, and all that stuff started when I was a child. And I thought it was normal. Of course, kids will develop dysfunctions. When they grow up in a household like that, it's very rare they don't. It's very rare they don't develop some sort of dysfunction. And those dysfunctions can turn into toxic behaviors later. But again, coming right back to having a stable person in their life, a logical, reasonable, rational person in their life. That's you. And it's so hard to do when you are already the target, you are already the victim, and you're trying to heal yourself. I understand that. But your kids, they need you. They need you to be that rock, that stable person. And it's going to be difficult, but you will do this. You will get through this. So I am so grateful for all the words you wrote. And I'm so glad you discovered what you're going through. You can give it a name. And this empowers you. This kind of knowledge empowers you. This is why I do the show. I want you to feel empowered with enough information to move forward, knowing what to call what's happening to you, so that when you move forward, you will know why. Like, why am I doing this? I don't know what's going on. Well, when you know what's going on, the why is easier to describe to others. Why are you leaving? Because he hurts me. Well, I don't recognize that. He doesn't seem to be a hurtful person. Well, he does. And he does it behind closed doors. You may not have seen that behavior, but I do, and the kids do. And we've been through enough. So he may be the nicest guy when we're out in public and when we're with friends, but behind closed doors, I've had enough. I've had enough. Now, I'm not even saying that you should say that. I mean, sometimes it's best not to say, oh, he's abusive or they're abusive, it's best not to say that kind of stuff. It's best to let them reveal themselves. And the problem that happens a lot is that the abusive person is nice and generous and kind to everyone else but the closest people in their life. So everyone else thinks that there's no problem. And that can be difficult. So sometimes you just have to go through the trials and tribulations of leaving someone that is hurting you and know that not everyone's going to believe why you're leaving. But it doesn't matter, because only you have to know why you're leaving. Only you need to know, and you just have to do the best you can and save your strength for what you need it for, not for petty arguments or disputes or trivial things. Save your strength for the big stuff, whatever that big stuff is. Sometimes big stuff comes along and you might need it, but you have it in you to do this. And I'm not encouraging you. I'm not here to say, hey, you should leave your relationship. This is your choice. This is your choice. If you think it cannot be helped, if you think he won't stop, if he is actually in therapy and is improving, then that might be a different story. But it's going to take some honesty on his part. It's going to take some vulnerability on his part and a lot of transparency. Hey, I talked about this in therapy and I realize I'm hurtful and I have to stop that and I have to take a break. I need to step back from the relationship a little bit because I need to work on myself. That is a healthy comment to make. But if he says, well, I want you to stay and I'm going to do everything to make you stay and I'll get therapy to make you stay, but if you leave, then what's the point of therapy? That's not so healthy. Then he's doing that for a means to an end, like you're saying. So let me just conclude by saying your kids are going to have their own experience with their dad. There's not much else that you can do except be that rock, be that supportive person, love them, and try not to lose it. Try not to lose it on them when they say things and it sounds like they believe those things. Just love them because they're looking for that. They're looking for that connection with their parent. And if one parent is always open and receptive and loving them, and the other parent is always pushing all that negativity onto them, saying, well, your mom did this and your mom did that, they're going to sense that. They're going to know what's happening. They'll figure it out. Might take a year, might take longer, might take less, but they'll figure it out because they're going to say things like, you notice mom never says anything bad about dad, but dad is always saying something bad about mom. That's what usually happens. So move forward with strength, and I wish you much healing, and you will get through this. Thanks so much for writing.